In the glittering showrooms of Stuttgart, Munich, and Wolfsburg, names like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Porsche gleam as symbols of wealth, precision, and power, but behind the polished chrome and the whisper of engines lies a darker story. These companies, now icons of luxury, were once part of a machine that consumed millions of lives. Their origins trace back to a time when beauty and brutality shared the same assembly line. Germany, 1933. A nation still reeling from the humiliation of Versailles and the collapse of its economy. Into this chaos steps Adolf Hitler, a man who sees technology as propaganda, machines as symbols of national pride. He promises to make Germany move again, faster than ever before, and for that he turns to the country's greatest engineers, men like Ferdinand Porsche, Karl Benz, and the visionaries behind Daimler and BMW. To Hitler, the automobile is more than transport. It is a tool of ideology, a rolling monument to German superiority. He dreams of autobahns stretching across Europe, and cars so advanced they would make other nations stare in awe. Under his regime, the German car industry becomes both an emblem of progress and an engine of war. At Daimler-Benz, the luxury car maker that built the world's first automobiles, the transformation begins swiftly. By 1935, Mercedes-Benz is producing armored vehicles, trucks, and engines for the Wehrmacht. Their elegant limousines, once a mark of prestige, become the official cars of the Nazi elite. Hitler himself rides in the massive Mercedes-Benz 770K Grosser, a car so powerful and imposing it seems built for conquest. The same craftsmanship that once built race cars now serves the Reich. When war erupts in 1939, the factories of Stuttgart, Munich, and Wolfsburg roar to life under new orders. The production of luxury sedans gives way to tanks, trucks, and aircraft engines. Chrome and leather are replaced by rivets and armor. Behind the propaganda posters of speed and victory, another reality takes shape, one of suffering and enslavement. Tens of thousands of forced laborers fill the factories, men and women from Poland, France, and the Soviet Union, torn from their homes, working under the threat of death. They build engines and vehicles that will carry their own captors to the front lines. The roar of German industry becomes the rhythm of their imprisonment. In Munich, BMW thrives under the Nazi war machine. Once known for motorcycles and aviation engines, the company now supplies the Luftwaffe with the beating hearts of its fighter planes, engines for the feared Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf 190. As the war intensifies, BMW's workforce swells, not with volunteers but with prisoners. By 1944, more than 25,000 forced laborers and prisoners of war work for BMW. Many will not survive the year. Executives keep meticulous records, every name, every hour, every death. The profits rise and the company expands, even as the front collapses. For BMW, as for much of German industry, the war is good business. At Mercedes, the story is no different. The Stuttgart plants operate around the clock, producing engines for trucks and armored vehicles. Slave labor fills the gaps left by men sent to fight. Entire shifts of prisoners from nearby camps are marched into the factories at dawn and returned at night, half-starved. In 1944, Daimler-Benz opens its own subcamp of Dachau. The company survives, but its conscience does not. By 1945, the Reich has fallen. The factories lie in ruins, bombed-out shells surrounded by twisted steel and broken glass. The war that made these companies rich has left them shattered. Allied soldiers walk through the debris and find ledgers, blueprints, and fragments of engines marked with swastikas. The machines of the future now lie among the ashes of the past. In the aftermath, the men who once built cars for Hitler face judgment. The Nuremberg trials uncover a vast network of industrial complicity. Executives from Daimler-Benz, BMW, and Krupp are questioned about their use of forced labor and collaboration with the Nazi regime. A few are convicted. Most are released within years. The world, eager to rebuild, needs their expertise more than their punishment. And so the rebuilding begins. With the ruins of Germany smoldering, Allied authorities decide to restart the nation's industries under supervision. Mercedes-Benz begins production again in 1947, reviving the pre-war 170 model. It becomes the car of a new Germany, modest, practical, and efficient. But behind every polished hood ornament lies the memory of what came before. BMW, nearly bankrupt, rebuilds slowly. Its factories have been dismantled or destroyed, its workers scattered, but in the 1950s a tiny vehicle called the Isetta saves the company. a bubble-shaped microcar built under license from Italy becomes the symbol of post-war recovery. From there, BMW begins to climb again, first with small sedans, then with performance cars that redefine German engineering. Yet for decades the company remains silent about its wartime past. Porsche, too, rises from the ashes. Ferdinand Porsche, who once designed tanks for Hitler, is briefly imprisoned by the French after the war. His son Ferry takes over the company, creating the first Porsche sports cars from leftover Volkswagen parts. Ironically, the same man who designed the Volkswagen Beetle, Hitler's people's car, now lays the foundation for a global luxury brand. And then there is Volkswagen itself, the car meant for every German family, born from the propaganda of the Reich. Built with funds collected from workers who never received their promised cars, the Volkswagen plant at Wolfsburg was meant to mass-produce the people's dream. Instead, it built military vehicles. When the war ended, it was British forces who resurrected the factory. Under Major Ivan Hurst, a few surviving Beetles were repaired, then produced en masse. The car that began as a fascist fantasy became a global symbol of peace, freedom, and post-war resilience. As Germany rebuilds, its industries transform from tools of war into engines of progress. The same factories that once armed an empire now export cars across the world. By the 1950s, the phrase "made in Germany" regains its luster, not through ideology but through engineering. Mercedes reclaims its place as a symbol of excellence. BMW becomes a brand of performance and prestige. Porsche defines speed and style. The world forgets quickly. Profit speaks louder than guilt, yet the truth never disappears. The archives remain, the survivors remember, and eventually the past begins to resurface. By the late 20th century, a new generation of historians, journalists, and activists begins to ask difficult questions. Who built these cars? Who paid the price? And how could the companies that shaped modern luxury also have fueled one of history's darkest regimes? In the quiet years after the war, the factories hum again, but this time the sounds are different. The clatter of assembly lines replaces the thunder of war machines. The smoke that once rose from forges of destruction now signals a new kind of power, economic revival. Germany begins to rebuild its identity, not through conquest, but through craftsmanship. The luxury car makers that once built vehicles for dictators now cater to diplomats, businessmen, and dreamers. Mercedes-Benz reintroduces elegance with the 300 series, cars that transport heads of state and movie stars. BMW finds its rhythm with the 507 and the 2002, redefining what a sports sedan could be. Porsche perfects its formula for beauty and speed with the 356 and the 911. The world applauds. The post-war economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder, turns Germany into the engine of Europe once again. No one wants to remember the factories that once built trucks for the Wehrmacht or the engines that powered Messerschmitts. The luxury brands reinvent themselves, not through denial, but through silence. Decade after decade, the story fades. The horrors of the camps and the forced labor lines are replaced in memory by chrome and horsepower. Glossy advertisements replace propaganda posters. The same craftsmanship that once armed an empire now sells aspiration. Germany becomes synonymous with precision, reliability, and pride. But beneath that pride lies something buried, unearthed only by those who dare to dig. In the 1980s and 1990s, historians begin to uncover documents sealed away in company archives, ledgers, contracts, photographs. They reveal what many suspected but few had proven, that forced labor had been a foundation of wartime profit. That entire production lines had depended on prisoners of war and concentration camp inmates. The revelation is not just uncomfortable, it's undeniable. At Daimler-Benz, investigators find records of over 40,000 forced laborers employed during the war, many under inhuman conditions. In BMW's files, the number is more than 25,000. Porsche's records reveal similar ties. Even Volkswagen, the brand reborn from rubble as a symbol of peace, is forced to confront the fact that its factory was built by forced labor from occupied Europe. For the survivors, these discoveries bring a long-delayed justice. For the companies, they bring reckoning and resistance. Legal battles begin. Journalists expose names and faces that corporations had tried to forget. The sleek logos of Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche suddenly carry shadows of their own, and slowly the brands begin to acknowledge the truth. In the late 1990s, after decades of denial, Daimler-Benz publicly admits its use of forced labor. BMW and Volkswagen follow. Together with other German firms, they contribute to the Remembrance, Responsibility and Future Foundation, a fund meant to compensate surviving forced laborers. Billions of marks are raised, but no amount of money can equal what was lost. These gestures, though late, mark a shift, a recognition that engineering and ethics can no longer be separated. The companies begin sponsoring memorials, supporting historical research, and funding education about the crimes of the regime that once made them rich. But the question lingers: how should a nation remember when its pride is built on the ruins of its guilt? For Mercedes, the answer is found in transparency. The company opens its archives to historians, publishes detailed reports about its wartime production, and funds exhibits that tell the full story, not just of innovation, but of complicity. For BMW, the reckoning comes through reflection, acknowledging the truth while celebrating the workers and designers who rebuilt the company from nothing. For Volkswagen, the transformation is symbolic. The Beetle, once born from a dictator's dream, becomes an icon of peace and progress. A car embraced by a generation that rebelled against everything the Reich once stood for. Yet the irony remains: the same nation that once sought domination through machines now conquers through design. The Autobahn, once conceived for blitzkrieg, becomes a symbol of freedom. The factories that once enslaved now employ. The names that once adorned war machines now grace luxury showrooms on every continent. Germany's post-war miracle is not just economic, it is moral, cultural, and deeply human. The car industry becomes a reflection of that transformation, from darkness to light, from obedience to innovation, from propaganda to pride. But it is a pride tempered by remembrance. In Stuttgart, Munich, and Wolfsburg, memorials now stand beside assembly lines. Stones engraved with names of those who labored and died where engines now hum. Some workers stop to read them during lunch breaks. Others pass them daily without a glance. Yet they are there, silent witnesses to what was once forgotten. The truth is simple, and it is haunting. The luxury of today was built on the suffering of yesterday. The elegance of a Mercedes hood ornament, the hum of a BMW straight six, the roar of a Porsche flat engine, all carry echoes of a time when engineering genius served evil. And that is the paradox of Germany's luxury cars. They are monuments not just to what humanity can create, but to what it must never repeat. As the engines of modern Germany roar across the autobahns, they carry both progress and memory, the same road leading forward and back. The same hands that build beauty now build truth. The ghosts of the past, once hidden beneath layers of steel and chrome, still whisper from the assembly lines, "Never forget who built us." Because history, like an engine, never truly stops running. It only changes gears.